It was supposed to be a normal night, no alarms, no warnings, just another warm summer evening across America. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, chaos began to unfold, almost in sync, across several cities. Gunfire in Florida, a suspect stealing a police car in Colorado, a foot chase ending with canine teeth in Marion County, and in California, a man with a knife attacking random people in broad daylight. These weren't scenes from a movie, they were real events, captured by police bodycams, 911 calls, and aerial footage, each more intense than the last. What happened on those days would leave civilians terrified, officers stunned, and prosecutors scrambling to piece together the truth. And while some of the suspects were caught, others wouldn't live to see trial. But what exactly went down, and how did it all spiral so quickly? June 29, 2023, Tampa, Florida. It was just past 11 p.m. when police received a chilling call. Shots had been fired at a busy intersection. Officers on the ground responded immediately, while an aerial unit was dispatched to track any movement from above. Within minutes, they spotted a suspicious vehicle fleeing the scene. As the car slowed near 32nd Avenue, a man suddenly stepped out. In his hand, a firearm. Without hesitation, he raised it and opened fire on officers.
Hey, put the windows down! Hands out of the car! Hey!
The response was instant. Police returned fire, striking the man as he scrambled back into the vehicle. The driver, later identified as a woman, slammed the gas and sped off with the wounded man beside her. But the escape didn't last long. Just a few blocks away, the vehicle stopped. The woman emerged with her hands raised. Her name was Jeanette Lockhart. Officers moved in carefully, guns trained on the vehicle, and dragged the man out. He was unresponsive. Moments later, paramedics confirmed it. He was dead. The suspect was identified as 42-year-old Kinsey Darcher. Inside the vehicle, police recovered a pistol that matched the weapon described by the original 911 caller. Jeanette wasn't just a driver. According to investigators, she helped him flee, tried to cover up the weapon, and nearly got officers killed. She was charged with attempted murder as an accomplice, evidence tampering, and evading law enforcement. But this wasn't the only time in June that a suspect would turn a police stop into a violent escape. June 20, 2023, Arapahoe County, Colorado. It was a little after 11 a.m. when patrol units received a report of an active shooter. Officers raced to the scene, but the suspect wasn't about to surrender quietly. As soon as they arrived, he jumped into his vehicle and floored it, triggering a high-speed pursuit that tore across city streets. The chase wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. The suspect caused multiple crashes, weaving into oncoming lanes and nearly ramming another car head-on. Police decided to end it before someone got killed. A perfectly timed pit maneuver brought the suspect's vehicle spinning to a stop. He was arrested, handcuffed, and placed in the backseat of a patrol cruiser. But that was only the beginning. While officers were still processing the scene, the man managed to contort his body and slip his cuffed hands from behind his back to the front. Then, in a move no one saw coming, he climbed into the front seat of the police cruiser, threw it into drive, and took off. The radio lit up with panic. A suspect had just stolen a police car, handcuffed, and was now barreling down the highway at full speed. Officers scrambled to deploy spike strips. As the car tore down the freeway, the suspect could be heard listening to police chatter over the unit's radio. Eventually, spike strips shredded the cruiser's tires. The vehicle lost control, slammed into a parked truck, and burst into flames. Officers dragged the man out just in time and rushed him to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Hours later, he was pronounced dead. His name was Anthony Alfonso, and despite being cuffed, surrounded, and seemingly cornered, he still managed to create one of the most chaotic escapes in recent memory. And yet, not all getaways end in flames. Some play out silently, until the moment the chase begins. DeLand, Florida. Just after 8 p.m., a sheriff's deputy on patrol spots a black Mercedes cruising slowly through traffic. Nothing seemed unusual, until he noticed the temporary license tag had been partially obscured. That was enough to initiate a stop. The deputy signaled the driver to pull over. The man inside complied, at least at first. Calmly, he told the deputy he didn't want to block traffic and would pull into a nearby shopping plaza. The officer agreed and walked back to his cruiser. But the moment the deputy turned his back, the suspect punched the gas. A new chase had begun. The deputy called for air support as the Mercedes weaved dangerously through rush-hour congestion. By the time it reached Highway 4, the suspect was using every gap in traffic to his advantage. But what he didn't know was that Sheriff Mike Chitt had just left a local baseball game nearby, and was already in position to help intercept the vehicle. In a rare moment of coincidence and timing, the sheriff and his team cornered the Mercedes. Officers swarmed the vehicle and pulled the suspect out before he could react. His name was Michael Bott, and after all that effort, his first words were an apology. He was charged with fleeing and attempting to elude law enforcement, as well as driving with a suspended license. His bail was set at $5,500, but while this suspect's capture was clean and quick, the next one would take a bite out of crime, literally. June 23, 2023. It was just before noon when a call came in to the Marion County Sheriff's Office. A gray Nissan Sentra had just been stolen from a local car wash. The thief didn't know it yet, but his escape window was already closing. Within minutes, deputies spotted the stolen vehicle and gave chase. The suspect floored it, but the run didn't last long. Somewhere down the road, he ditched the car and bolted on foot, hoping to vanish before officers could catch up. But he wasn't just running from men. Deputy Corporal Dolly and his K-9 partner, Carrier, were deployed into the area. Trained, focused, and fast, Carrier locked onto the scent and sprinted ahead. Within moments, the dog caught up to the fleeing suspect and was identified as Majid Haq. When deputies searched him, they found drug paraphernalia in his pocket, but the real surprise was in his backpack: methamphetamine and marijuana, packaged in a way that left no doubt this was ready for sale. And the next case would involve no cars, no dogs, just panic, blood, and a misunderstood weapon. May 30, 2023. Just after noon, Long Beach 911 dispatchers were overwhelmed by a flurry of terrified calls. Multiple witnesses claimed a man was walking through a quiet residential area and attacking people at random with what appeared to be a knife. The first incident happened near Livingston Drive. A woman was stabbed, then a man next to her. As horrified neighbors watched, the attacker moved toward a nearby park, where a father stood holding a young child in his arms. Without warning, the suspect lunged. The father went down hard, the child tumbling with him. As the man was struck repeatedly, the attacker kept moving. Turning onto 2nd Street, he came up behind another man and slashed upward in a sudden, brutal motion. Police were already racing to the scene. It had been barely 5 minutes since the first call came in. As officers arrived, the suspect was still moving, this time attempting to force his way into a private residence. Before he could cross the threshold, one of the officers opened fire. The man dropped. He was identified as 31-year-old Mario Najjar. Remarkably, he survived and was rushed to a nearby hospital in stable condition. But the chaos didn't end there. On the ground beside him, officers found the object he had been using: a screwdriver. Witnesses had believed it was a knife, and for the victims, it didn't make much difference. Najjar was charged with multiple counts of attempted murder, robbery, assault with a deadly object, and resisting arrest. His bail was set at a staggering $1 million. Every one of his victims survived, but their injuries were serious, and the trauma ran deep. And while this suspect ended up in cuffs instead of a body bag, it raised a chilling question: how many more near tragedies happen before someone manages to stop it? 5 different suspects, 5 different cities, 5 wildly different outcomes, but every one of them started the same way, with a single decision that spiraled out of control. A gun at an intersection, a stolen police car, a hidden license plate, a bag of meth, a screwdriver mistaken for a knife. Each story could have ended quietly. Instead, they ended in chaos, blood, and flashing blue lights. What these incidents remind us is simple: in the world of law enforcement, there are no routine calls.